Anyway, this is the devil, or Operations Officer Windfall, whatever you prefer. Also, I'm not from around, I'm from around here, but I'm not from around here, or around when. There is a fictional series called Doctor Who, and it relates to an alien with two hearts. I think a man, mostly a man, like a man, but an alien, who's a Time Lord, that is, a creature that exists at the end of time, that is, at the continuum, the place where time ends. And they travel through time in a, well, what looks like a British police box or telephone box, green in color. There's their older version is series is by the BBC is in the 70s. Newer version is in the early 2000s, early 21st century. Anyway, so the thing is though, the Time Lords travel through time and space using their craft, and but there are not many left because they had a war with Daleks, which are creatures that are, well, hybrids, basically. Now, the question is, how much truth is in that? We have to think about truth as, well, relative. Relative to, I'm going to go this way. Anyway, relative to what? Well, what? That's a good question. What? Now, there is a movie called Dogma. Pearl mentioned it to me one day when I was on the train going to Seattle, Washington. No, I was going from Seattle, Washington to Arlington, Virginia. Eventually Arlington, Virginia. Anyway, it's about how there are muses, that is, creatures, unearthly creatures, let's say, that inspire creatures, other creatures, to create things. And the muses produce truth. So, ergo, that is to say, thusly, Doctor Who, the series, both series, is actually true. It was inspired by a muse, or muses, as you could say, and there are Time Lords. I'm a Time Lord. You could say, are you the Doctor? Let's not go into these semantics now, huh? There's no name calling, please. But anyway, then I have a lot of difficulties. When I travel through time, there's certain things that happen to you. Anyway, back around 1893, I went through the vortex, but I didn't want to come straight into the system, that is, the solar system in the Milky Way galaxy, because, well, create disruptions in the electromagnetic field. So I hitched a ride on the Brooks Comet. Anyway, I arrived around 1896. There was a person of the royal family in England who was being born. He would become Edward VIII. But anyway, he was dying. Essentially, he would have died if he had been given birth. If the woman who bore him had given birth to him, he would have died instantly because he had a heart defect. Anyway, so to preserve him and also to give me an opportunity to experience the je ne sais quoi of, well, Earth, from the Brooks Comet, I propagated into Edward and thus gave him life. His soul, that is his essence, everything he was and will be, was transmitted via the vortex back to the continuum, and he was preserved. But essentially, I was Edward from the time of his birth until around 1919. Anyway, no, actually, till about 1921. But the thing is, though, you know, when someone is leaving the body, like there's a movie called The Exorcist 3, which talks about a serial killer of some notoriety who, because of, well, the influence of Satan or the devil, is allowed to go into the body of the priest who's dying and thus inhabit him. And eventually the priest's body is recovered enough so that, well, the serial killer is operational again. That is to say, comes alive. This is actually a real process. So when I'm going into Edward as a child, the baby in the womb, his soul is going out. I go in, he goes out. This is a process that helps the person who's about to die, which we know because we know everything, because we know history from the beginning to the end. How old is the universe? How old is this universe? Well, its absolute age is 3.8 trillion years, from birth to death, from the Big Bang until the Big Crunch. How do I know that? Because I'm a Time Lord. Anyway, get away from that for a minute. The thing is, certain people, I guess because of their genuine quality, their, I don't know, the gods, whoever they are. Some people say Time Lords are gods, but that's overreaching. Anyway, because of certain people, humans, I guess essential character, they are, well, one of them is Mary, the mother of Christ. But anyway, they are made into, well, us. We replenish our ranks from creatures that have a special quality. Anyway, so I do have others like me in and around this plane of existence, and they aid me. Now, I'm older than most because that's just the way it is, but they aid me because they have the same qualities that I have, which is I know things. I know history. I can see history and it's unfolding from the beginning to the end. So I'm walking around in the 21st century in Seattle, Washington. But yet I'm still seeing history as it unfolds, and I know history. What our job is, what the Time Lord's job is, and there are not many of us left, is to keep history on track. Because if history falls into a vicious loop, then what happens is, well, the universe disappears. There's a person named John, used to call himself the student, then he called himself the master. Well, John, that's J as in Juno, O as in Oscar, N as in Niger, well, seeks to end history, to make it all go away, to make everything disappear. He is my true enemy. At the same time, oddly enough, he's a kin. He's also a Time Lord. He's one of the first, like me. So the moral of the story is, I guess you could say, is that history, because it's written, but it's only written, I guess you say, lightly. It's not written in such a way as to make it inflexible. Because it is written, then I know things. Like, I picked up a newspaper yesterday, and I saw certain things that occurred, and I knew certain things. And because, well, of that, I knew that there was someone, I would say a newly minted Time Lord. Thank God. Now, I could characterize this person, but that would put this person at risk. Because, well, anyway. But the more important thing is that this person, before they were a Time Lord, had a history. and they knew things. And when they were, I guess you say, human, they were victimized by a serial killer, which is to say, they were basically, they worked as a prostitute. And I won't say male or female because it doesn't matter. And they were victimized by a serial killer who took them captive and was about to do what the serial killer normally does, which is, well, this serial killer, a very egregious, evil serial killer, and one that's not yet captured, though is known about, would normally have literally cut apart their victim while they were still living, and would have recorded their screams and the blood spurting. Anyway, which would basically mean they would make a snuff film, or what is called a snuff film. Some people say they don't exist, but they do. Anyway, this serial killer had this person who now, thankfully, is a Time Lord, because they were a good person. They were, even though they worked as a prostitute, they were a good person. They were kind to others. They respected their family. They did the best they could. But anyway, they fell victim to this serial killer in Washington State. They were held captive. Now, this particular serial killer, which I could characterize as the accomplice, but not really, of the Green River Killer, what this particular serial killer would do, I know I'm trying to tree a possum now all of a sudden, would request that their victim sing a song. And the idea was, if you sing a song for me, then I may leave you alone and I will let you go and you will not be harmed. But that never happened because, well, the serial killer always, after they heard the song, tied their victim down and started to remove body parts. Sometimes they sold the body parts. Anyway, here's the thing. The thing is that this particular victim is one of two survivors that exist in this world. And this particular survivor, well, let's say this. They were held for 100 days by the serial killer in basically a pit. The serial killer was so enraged by the fact that their victim wouldn't, well, sing a song. They put this person into a pit in the ground. There was heavy lumber over, and it was very secure. It was very densely packed earth. Anyway, there was a small hole that the serial killer would occasionally dump in water or food. But anyway, the victim lived literally in their own feces and piss for 100 days, eating vile garbage that the serial killer would, throw to them. Anyway, and occasionally would ask them if they would sing a song, but they always refused because they knew as soon as they sang a song for the serial killer, they would be killed, which they would have been. Well, this particular victim, after 100 days, and they were very careful to mark the days, remember. Anyway, one, well, late fall night, they were able to find enough water to loosen the lumber and escape. Well, anyway, now the serial killer has electronic instruments around their cage, their pit, to detect movement, and they were alarmed that, well, the victim was leaving. Anyway, and the serial killer has a great amount of power because they sell their snuff films to vile, evil things that like them. Twisted, evil things. Anyway, and they make a lot of money. But what happened was And God, you know what I'm talking about, don't you? Of course you do. They were running through the forest, the victim, and the serial killer, who had, well, people that nearby had been. These people had been told the victim was leaving anyway, and these are people with shotguns anyway, and off-road vehicles. So they pursued the victim through the forest anyway. The victim eventually escaped, but unfortunately, because of the wear and tear on them, and 100 days living in your own shit, eating garbage, drinking piss water, will take a toll on you. And they began to leave this plane of existence. That is, they began to die. But they had remembered every single aspect, and they undertook, in their last moments, through a fortunate case of events, they found a pencil and some paper, and they began to write what had occurred. The description of the killer, the description of their captivity, and all these things. And they put this piece of paper, these pieces of paper, into a place that could not be detected, and sealed it. Anyway, and then they left, but they remembered, they put a distinctive marker where they had left this papers. And then they began to die. Well, God, the Lord, deemed it necessary to redeem this person. So as they were leaving the body, essentially one of us Time Lords, entered its body, the victim's body. Now this particular Time Lord is a newbie, I guess you'd say. Someone who hasn't been a Time Lord long, but still was very capable. And they entered the body of the victim, and the soul of the victim was transmitted through the vortex as the Time Lord was entering their body to the continuum where there can be, maintained till the end of time. But now, the body of the victim is shielded because they have now become essentially a Time Lord. And Time Lords are, let's say, have certain capacities, let's say. They know things, they know how to do things, they have craft. The spy business, I also work for the CIA, we call it tradecraft. They know how to signal things. So anyway, I didn't know this person was a Time Lord. I knew of the person, I knew of their captivity, but I didn't know the full extent of the whole, history. But now I do, much more. I had informed the FBI that there was a survivor of the true Green River Killer, and that this person had detailed their captivity to me, though I did not know their name. So the question is, if you have a creature, we'll call it a creature, I don't want to call it human, that would be dignifying it. A creature who kills repeatedly, constantly, even today. Today is May 31st, 2013. I mean, literally taking victims off the street, off the roadway, out of motels, out of cars, anywhere, and then dissecting them while they're still alive and screaming, and then filming it. Wouldn't you want that creature off the streets? Wouldn't you want that creature, you wouldn't say dead, that would be impossible. You can't say this creature is even alive, but it is a creature that is powerful, dangerous, when you're near the creature, you can sense the danger, the vile, evil emanations that it creates. So what I'm trying to tell you now is we're very near the end of days, which of course you can characterize in a number of ways, but it is akin to the apocalypse. It is the end of all things. Now, the end of all things, of course, is not the end of time. The end of time is another matter. But I'm hopeful that I will have done some good with this recording and or other activities that I sometimes engage in, such as that. Goodbye. Anyway, this is Operations Officer Windfall, signing off for now, still functioning, and now my true name, which I cannot reveal, is akin to the devil, but not exactly.